Welcome to the Catbird Quilts. I'm Kathy Martin. In today's video, I want to bring you into my favorite part of the quilting process, which is the fabric pull. And this time it's for the Fireside quilt, and I have a lot to say about it. A good fabric pull for me ranks up there with winning bobbin chicken, mitered corners on binding, nested seams, and getting a quilt back from the long armor. I mean, the very best. It's just the best. I like what I call a tight colorway, which I've completely made up that term. And for me, it's just like not very scrappy, very thoughtfully curated so that everything I feel like really goes. Not too matchy, although sometimes I like matchy, but it really works and it's just very visually appealing and cohesive. I love that. Like I love that. What that means then is I spend an awful lot of time thinking about the fabrics that I put in a quilt pattern, and it gives me life. Now, sometimes I will get a little bit bound up, which is in fact what happened with this fabric pull. So of course I have to share. I just really enjoy that process. Some people don't enjoy the fabric choosing process. And in fact, that's the appeal for a lot of people of buying a fabric bundle or even a pre-cut quilt kit, because those decisions have been made for you. And I get that, because when it really works, it really works. But for me, the choosing is the delight. And my mind likes to chew on fabrics. That's weird sounding. Like thinking through what works together, what doesn't work together. And, I have a busy brain, and as a result, have busy things to say about it. It really is. Just to me, that's part of the appeal. And it's why I like using shirts, because they have not been curated into a fabric line. And so it's up to me to figure out how to put them together. So super fun. Sometimes challenging. So I got started on this idea of the Fireside quilt. I had seen the quilt pattern probably maybe a year ago and instantly liked it. And I liked almost every version that I saw. You can tell a great quilt pattern when you see it in several or many or hundreds of different colorways, and it still looks good. And I feel like that's the case with this quilt pattern. And so it's the Fireside Quilt by Suzy Quilts. You may remember it from a previous video where I talk about picking a great quilt pattern. And so I have a friend in mind that I've been wanting to make a quilt for. She's been very, very supportive of my quilting habit and has recognized that it's been so good for me. That quilting is therapy thing. And as we started the YouTube channel, was also very supportive of that. So she's just really a positive source. The good vibes only, that's what she is in my life. And so I thought, I'm going to make a quilt for her. And I've notice that the quilts that I show her, the completed quilts that I've done, the ones that she tends to really go ooh over are the ones that are more modern or modern traditional at the most. And I do I think I do a lot of everything, but I definitely have that kind of modern traditional bent, but the really super modern quilts I haven't done a lot of. And the reason for that is, that's a video for another time. So I had this idea that I would make this Fireside quilt for her because it does feel very modern, but it really is just a courthouse steps that's been thoughtfully designed. At the same time, I've been obsessed, truly fixated on linen quilts. After I made the first one, all linen quilt, which was the comfort quilt in the Rose family, then I made my nap quilt for myself. I wish I could make a all linen quilt for everyone in the world. All of our world's problems would be solved if everybody just had a linen quilt. I believe this. I'm not even exaggerating. It's like, I'd like to give the world a quilt. That's how I feel about that. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to make a linen quilt in the Fireside quilt pattern, which PS is really not the best idea because it is very structural. And it's very important to keep those lines really straight in the quilt pattern. That's just a tip there if you're working on the Fireside quilt pattern. And linen is rumply and crinkly. And so, didn't stop to think, hey, these blocks are going to be really misshapen. That's also a video for another time. So simultaneously, fixated on linen, want to make this quilt for my friend, want it to be modern. And I have been noticing I do not use cream in my quilts. I use white and ivory, winter white. Like, I just use a lot of white as backgrounds. And I don't even have a lot of cream. I mean, really any, like ecru and bone, and no, there are people that is their bread and butter in their quilting, and I just don't have that. But I have that in linen because I buy linen. And so cream color linen, no problem. Get it home, have not given any thought. So I thought, okay, Fireside quilt, modern, using linen. Ooh, I'll use cream. What goes with cream? Blue goes with cream. Fantastic. I happen to have some blue linen. And I have this navy that I have also really loved that I was going to integrate into my nap quilt, but it was just too dark of a navy and it was too contrasty. And really what I wanted was just like comforting sea glass feel. So I'm like, done. So my youngest daughter and I sat down in our living room floor, pulled out the linen tote. Yes, I have a tote of linen. So let me just actually spread those out and let you see for yourself. Talking about this gorgeous print that looks like a quilting cotton. I'm hoping maybe the close-up shot will get it. So you can see it's just this teeny tiny, I don't even know what I would call that. It's not a flower, but it's got navy all through it and then light blue. Almost really these colors. It's really like almost the perfect gradient. Now, it is not linen, and we will forgive it for that. And I have mixed linen and cotton in plenty of quilts. So we're just going to pretend that it's linen and keep rolling. And so those are those fabrics together. And I loved that. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to do it, but one of the ways that I really like is that center block and then the left and right and top and bottom are color. The four corners can be a different color. So that was my vision. This was going to be in the center. This would be top and bottom, left, right, and then this one would be in the corner. And I would use my really pretty cream to go with it. Oh, how lovely, right? And I loved that together. And then there was the snag of, I don't have enough of this. That's okay. Lots of linen to be had, lots of linen. And got that out and thought, well, if I pair these up correctly, we'll have the center block will be one fabric, and then top, bottom, left, right can have a different background fabric, and then the corners can either be this or something else. And so good to go. So I made the first block. It is not a small block. It's actually quite large, and by quite large, from a quilting standpoint, this is humongous. It is so humongous that it will not fit on my table because there's actually one more, I wanted to say row, one more ring that still needs to be attached. I loved it. I really did. I thought it was like, oh, okay, maybe linen isn't the right choice because this is so structural, but that's okay. I'll stitch in the ditch and anchor it down and we'll be great. And it's beautiful. And I had a little check in my spirit because it's very high contrast. So this navy is a very dark navy and actually densely navy, which is why I didn't end up in my comfort quilt. So it has that real, it's almost like black-white kind of contrast. That's okay. It's going to be in the center. It'll make sense. So with this one almost made, I needed to see how that middle blue would look with the other cream. And it just so happened that I was doing a video on how to pick a great quilt pattern. And I wanted to use this other medium blue that was a directional print. And so let me show you that. So I made really a part of this block with the striped shirt to demonstrate how stripes or a directional print might not be ideal for this particular quilt pattern. Ironically, loved it. Got this far and was like, wait a minute, something's kind of off. I really had no intention of using this shirt. And my thought was that I would take those strips out, just seam rip it and take those strips out and put my medium blue that I really wanted to use in it. And that was the plan. And I got this far and went, ooh, those creams don't look right together. And I didn't notice it when it was on my table. When I noticed it, I had put it on the design wall behind me just to get it off of my table, and walked in from the other room and went like, ooh. So this cream is very cool. And this cream is very warm. This is in the yellow warm family. I said it just a few minutes ago. It's so cool, it almost reads green. And I thought, well, they're not going to be touching. So I put another, the fabric that I was going to use in between them. I did this on the design wall. And honestly, still didn't like it. And I'm going to stop right here and say, one of the great things about the Fireside quilt pattern, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do it and why I thought it might be great for shirts, is she has all of these different options for colorways and ways to think about how to put the blocks together. Any colorway that you can possibly think of, actually. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration. But my favorite was the limited color palette, which is what she calls it, limited color palette. And I feel like that could also be a t-shirt that I wear that represents my quilting style, limited color palette. And in her example, hers was green, and she used a singular background fabric and then varied the darker stripe that's around it. And I loved it. And that was really what I had as my vision for this dark blue, medium blue, light blue. It just so happens that I don't have enough linen in the same fabric, in the same color, to make it work. And so my initial thought was that, oh, I'll just use these two that are close. And then I didn't like it. And if this doesn't bother you, like if this being a little bit cool and this being a little bit warm doesn't bother you, that is okay. We all have different things that bother us. I thought I was going to hate the stripe. I actually love the stripe. I thought I was going to love the creams. I don't love the creams. This might be like, you'd be like, gosh, leave it alone. It's great. And it probably is great, but not for me. So I had some splaining to do to myself. Lucy, you got some splaining to do. I just didn't like it. And then I had to figure out what to do next. So I had the idea. At this point, I was like, maybe part of the problem is the fact that I'm doing this gradient from dark to medium to light, which is actually highlighting how the background fabric doesn't really match. But maybe if I use a different color along with my blues to see if that will kind of balance it out. So this is where the fabric pull took a sharp left and nearly derailed. So in the process of trying to figure out what to do next, it occurred to me that my friend, though she has a fairly neutral home environment, the quilts that she has most responded to positively that I have shown her have been actually exceedingly vibrant. So the Adventureland quilt, the Elena quilt, anytime I come in and go, I just finished a quilt and it's these like really vibrant, happy colors, she goes, oh, I was at this crossroads. I could stay with this and maybe not be satisfied with my creams. I could wait and continue shopping at the thrift store for more creams, hoping to find more linen in a color that matched, which that sounded terrible to me, even though, I love going to the thrift store. Or I could maybe back up a little bit from it, from my original idea, and introduce some new colors. And that's what I decided that I would do. So as much as I love these two, I said goodbye to them temporarily. And I pulled out this red linen that I have. I don't usually do a lot of yardage, but I happened to find this on sale when my local quilt store was closing. And I thought, ooh, that would be really pretty if I did this on the top and bottom and left and right. And then it would kind of have this almost like flower feeling, this flower motif. So then I had to decide what would go in the corner. I love my handy dandy color wheel. And so I'm looking at my color wheel and I'm thinking, what could I do here? And so here's my blue, which of course there's not one that's dark enough, but nonetheless. And here's my red. And look at what is right in the middle. And you know what? I have some purple linen. So I thought, well, that would be cool. Other option would be to go like almost like a lime, they call it yellow green or spring green. So that way I'd be doing this triad, right? And I don't really have any green anymore. I used it all in my comfort quilt. And so I was like, that's okay. I love an analogous colorway. So I pulled my purple out. And this is my purple. And I'll be honest with you, even in the get-go, I was like, believing in the soundness of the color wheel, I really wanted to try to make it work. So I just kind of sat with it a little bit. I had this idea that I could put, instead of doing like maybe the cream with the purple and the cream with the red, I could do like dark purple and light purple and red and maybe a lighter red or a pink. And so at that point, I was really spinning out. And I even seriously considered seam ripping this guy and putting the light blue as the contrasting. And if you happen to have looked at that Fireside quilt, you know that one of her options is very much that. So it's a darker color with a lighter color in several different colors. And I got this far and I had lost all vision for it. Not like that I thought it wasn't a good idea. I just couldn't envision it. And when I get to that place, that's why these guys are here. They're not just here for home decor or for interest, although they do make me happy. I had to color it because I really kind of got lost. And so this is what I started with. And you can see I started off with all white in the background, and that would have represented the cream. And then I came back, you can see I just like scratched in this light blue. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I colored it out and was like, yuck, no. And I knew with this nearby, this does not even begin to cover how contrasty this is. This is almost black. This navy is so dark. So I was like, okay, maybe that doesn't need to be the center of the quilt. So I was like, well, let's put red in the center. And so it's still that gradient. So it's red to purple to blue, and that's that. And you can see I started off with, I colored it with yellow because I didn't have any cream. And I was getting ready to do the whole thing. And I was like, ugh. But I kind of liked the way that looked a little bit like leaves. And then I went back and colored in my pink. And then I went back and colored in my light purple. And even knowing this is not even the right color purple. Like, so I'm coloring it and looking and coloring and looking. And I hated that too. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe I should put purple in the center. Bless my heart. And so I did this one, which actually I liked the most out of the color choices that I had. And I still didn't just love it. I didn't like it because it had that dark purple in the center. So I did another version. This was the closest that I had. There was just something about it that wasn't working for me. And part of it, I was noticing this purple is not obviously as purple as my colored pencil. It's almost brown. It's so like burgundy purple. And I got right here and was like, what is happening? I normally don't have to do 4 separate color pages before I can land on. So usually I do one color page. I'm like, right, that's what I thought. And then I just get going on it. So I recruited the youngest and just was like, what do you think about these? And I just laid these out. Like, which of these is your favorite? And she looked at me and she said, what are you trying to accomplish? She didn't have that tone. There was no sass. It was like just a legitimate question. What are you trying to accomplish? Because each of them has a different feel. And I explained, I wanted to do it in linen and da-da-da-da. And she goes, I think you're trying to do too much I think you're trying to accomplish too much. So I started explaining all that I was trying to accomplish. I was trying to use cream. Cream is not my happy place. I was trying to make this quilt that would look good in this friend's home. I was trying to do a modern quilt pattern. I was also testing whether this quilt pattern would be good for shirts with a singular background that I did not have. And I'm trying to guess what colors I thought that she would like that would be happy. That's an awful lot to try to accomplish in one quilt. She said, does it have to be linen? No, it does not. She goes, and what's her favorite color? So I put it all away. And I happened to see my friend later in that week and intentionally and carefully steered the conversation into favorite colors, orange and peacock blue. At that point, I was like, and see, this is why you don't try to force it. And so I put all these away. And I reminded myself that even though I would like to give the world a linen quilt, I do not have to make an all linen quilt. I have an entire fabric stash of all kinds of colors, and they're all available to me. And I mix fabrics all the time and love it. Like I don't have to have a 100% cotton quilt top. And I even use cotton poly sometimes. So I put it all away and I got out my fabric again, pretending like I wasn't going to use any linen. And then I was getting ready to make this video and I had too much coffee and too many thoughts and was agitated and irritated and grouchy and all of those things. And was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to the thrift store because that is a happy place. I found a few things, and one of them was the key to the final fabric pull. So I printed a final coloring page, and I reminded myself what my friend loves and what I love about her and what I know to be true, which is she loves flowers. She obviously loves orange, which I didn't know. She loves modern quilts that are bright and vibrant and happy. And I all but closed my eyes, and this is what I drew. I actually had, and you might be able to see it, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do the red as the dominant color or orange. I decided to go for orange. And when I got here, I was like, oh my goodness, I love it. I think that is so pretty because to me, it does kind of have that flowery feel. But instead of like green leaves, it's got that teal, whatever, I don't know. It's not really peacock blue, but this was my drawing. And so then it was really just a matter of looking through my fabric stash. So I want to show you, I'm not going to belabor the point. I've said that once already this week, and both times I am belaboring the point. I had all different kinds of oranges. Some of them were too brown. Some of them were too muted. And the one that I found at the thrift store, it was the Goldilocks of the orange shirts. It was just right. So I had this in my stash. All of these are shirts, by the way, which is so crazy. Just this kind of tealish, yummy. I loved this shirt when I saw it. I was like, I have to buy that shirt. And then this is linen. So I was able to get my linen back in. And that is that. And then this is an Oxford cloth shirt, which is 100% cotton. And I liked these together. I mean, even just that, y'all. I mean, come on. So I got this far, and I had my red linen that I had washed in prep, thinking that I was going to do the purple. And didn't do. And though that is pretty, it's a very blue red. It has blue undertones. And because it's linen and because it's been washed, it lost some of the vibrance, some of the density of the color. And even though I thought it was pretty, I was just like, oh, it's not quite right. And I want quite right. And so I looked through my shirts and my stash, and I found this shirt. And I laid it down next to the orange, which the orange is cotton poly, by the way. And so if you have cotton poly shirts and you've thought to yourself, I'm going to have to throw those out. No, you won't. Just use a lot of pins and use some starch. It'll work just fine. Now, it will not fade the same way cotton and linen are going to fade. But because I use shirts that have already been washed and washed and washed, this is probably going to be the color this is going to be. Maybe 100 years from now, this will fade to pink and this will still be this bright orange, if it makes it that far. So I got right here and was like, that's it. And then I remembered my color wheel. And I should really not be surprised that this red that's more orangey red than blue red looks really, really good up against that teal, because they are literally opposites on the color wheel. And this overall just has an orange feel, and this has that teal, turquoise blue, cyan feel. It just works. This is it. This is a color combination. It always works. I got it together and was like, oh, and was so pleased with myself. But really what I was so pleased about was that I had given myself permission to let go of the original idea. I mean, it was with a little help, but I did come to the conclusion that I was trying to do too much. The irony for me is that we still ended up with linen in the quilt. And I can save my cream for another day. It does not have to be this project, doesn't have to be this quilt. I can take that block apart and use the strips 1,000 other ways. Or I can keep it and maybe I'll find that cream linen that matches and I can actually see that vision realized as well. But this was my end point. It was a little bit of a process. And by little bit, I mean not a little bit. But I love this process. And I would not have been unhappy with what I originally planned. This really gives me joy. And it has been worth my brain chewing on those fabrics and that problem solving. It's that creative problem solving that so many of us really enjoy in the quilting process. I've heard it said time and time again, and I agree with it, that done is better than perfect. Or, if you can't see it from a galloping horse, you're not going to see it. Or, just good enough is good enough. And I 100% believe that. I think that's right. I think sometimes we need permission for it to, it doesn't have to be perfect. But in the inception stage of quilting, I'm Goldilocks. I want it to be just right. I don't want to compromise so greatly in the very beginning. There are going to be more compromises to be made down the road. I'm going to have corners that don't match up. I'm going to have seams that are wobbly or aren't a scant 1/4 inch. I'm going to have quilting that may not be exactly the way it's supposed to be. There are going to be lots of little imperfections all along the way. And this is not the perfect colorway, but it is just right. And that's one of the things about a fabric pull that just makes me so happy. And I hope it makes you happy too. I'm Kathy Martin. This is the Catbird Quilts. Thank you so much for watching.